Here we are, Shandell. Oh, we are so excited to be here for the first, whatever this is going to be. Going to be
Yep.
fully transparent in the creation of this. But this is our first video of Everyday Somatics, our brand new YouTube channel. And again, I don't know. I don't know. That's what's so
We
exciting
just
about it.
really, yeah, we really felt like everyday somatics, that phrase just kept coming to both of us. And it's just like, this is what we're incorporating into our every single day. And so we're like, we've got to do something about this. We didn't know if it was a YouTube channel or a podcast or, I mean, we thought about blog, but I don't want to do the writing. So,
Neither. No thanks.
yeah.
Not right now.
And so we're going to give this a shot and see what comes.
So initially, like really what we want to give you a peek in is a conversation around everyday somatics. And, we will be sharing our own stories a lot through this. Because to me, like I'll speak for myself, somatics is so personal and it is my body, right? And so as I'm sharing my experience, my intention is that you can get curious about what your body is saying. And um mm, the stories, like what really like sprung this thing into life was Shandell and I sit on Marco Polo and we're constantly going back and forth. And we're talking about like how is my body feeling when I'm making this decision. And like it's such a natural part of our conversation. So this is kind of that sneak peek into those conversations, and hopefully again, my intention and our intention is that you can start getting curious of what your body is saying and giving you practices and curiosities into, okay, what is the somatic thing? Because I know every one of you is hearing about it, and you may be even in the space where you're doing different somatic practices, breath work, and different modalities that do bring it in. But everyday somatics is the idea that every day, the more that we can be tapping into our body's wisdom, the more that we can be feeling this body and how I call her she, how she's speaking to me, the more present I have become. You want to add to that?
Yeah, and I just feel like we go through so many different experiences throughout our day, and a lot of times we're so out of touch with how we feel about it or what's even happening. Our body is trying to tell us something, but we're so disconnected that we just continue to push through. That with the everyday somatics, we can be in the line at the grocery store and then just checking in with ourselves. How do I actually feel about standing here in this line? Am I frustrated that the line is so long? Where am I feeling that? And do I feel like I'm in a hurry and I want to hurry and get out of here? Am I happy to just be to stand here for a few minutes to do nothing? So that's really why I wanted to pull in like the everyday somatics, is checking in with yourself multiple times throughout the day of like, what are you actually feeling? Because the more you can do that when you do have the bigger emotions or situations that trigger those things, you have built that capacity for the check-in and for the awareness and knowledge of what you're feeling. So
Yeah. See,
yeah.
even in this conversation, my shoulders just relaxed. And I was like, yes, yes. Okay, I'm open to hearing more. I'm open to talking more.
Yeah, and even on our Marcos, a lot of the times you and I will be a witness to each other as we are talking through what we're somatically feeling and experiencing in the moment. So I'm assuming that we'll have plenty of those moments on here too. So people can not only get the verbiage or the awareness of themselves, but also sometimes see it in real life, in action, while you and I are just every day talking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, you had mentioned about the disassociation, and I think that that is a good starting point. You get full transparency from us. So I have a podcast, Stephanie Joseph podcast. Shandell's been on my podcast and will be on there multiple times, probably cross posts even between this project. But then I had this idea that I wanted to record something on relating to the body. And you were talking as your last share about the disassociating. If you haven't felt into your body, or you have been disassociated for so long.
Sorry, keep going.
Coming back.
Coming back.
um, that there, to me, there is a connection there could possibly be a disconnection actually. If you're getting called in, like somatic work speaks to you and you're like, okay, what is this? Somebody comes in and says, listen to your body. What is your body telling you? And you're like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. My body's telling me what? And so the whole premise of what I wanted to record, and it just didn't feel correct, is that piece of first we have to learn to relate to the body. Because if I had lived so many of my years disassociating, but I didn't know that I was disassociated. I didn't know that I was disconnected until I knew what connected to my body meant. So there's that piece of just that beginning part of relating that then leads to the curiosity, that then leads to understanding the wisdom if you choose to go there. But what would you say, like, what has been so important for you of that initial step of just the relationship to your body? Because interesting enough, the definition of somatics is relating to the body. That is the definition. But what does that actually mean?
Right. Well, and I'll say my experience is different. I didn't dissociate from my body. I ignored and bypassed. So for me, my biggest thing was, oh my gosh, my stomach is killing me. My chest feels really constricted. And then I would come up with all of these excuses of why that was actually happening. And so I would bypass what my body was like basically screaming at me, saying. So I didn't dissociate, I bypassed and I ignored. So for me, like relating to my body has really been this like beautiful new relationship. Because I've worked with the body for, I mean, I've taught yoga for 20 years, right? So, and that was kind of like my tiptoe into connecting with my body. So I had developed a new appreciation for the body, but more physically, right? The physical views. And then when I got into energy kinesiology and the mind body, it was much more of the energy lines of the body, the chakras, the meridians. And I'm like, I know how those relate to the emotional aspects of the body and where it's held in the body. But in somatics, I have finally developed this beautiful relationship with my body. And so the relating is I am not separate from my body and I don't have to, I get to honor what my body is saying. So relating to what it is experiencing and what my mind is trying to tell me or trying to solve or anything like that, they both get to soften. So yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the beginning parts of my spiritual journey. It was, we're this spiritual beings having a human experience. And I do believe there is truth to that. But what somatics has brought into my awareness is that actually this body is part of that experience. This mind is part of it. My soul is part of it. It all is side by side, coexisting. All of it is together. But I'm like, it took me and it grounded me into this experience. It said, instead of this, like, it's just this vehicle to get through life. It's like, no, this is part of the experience that's driving this life. And the wisdom that comes from her, that yes, I can sit in meditation and I can sit connected to spirit, but when I can ground it into this and make the physical changes and listen to her, that's where like all of these pieces of like, okay, this is actually an experience. This human experience is something I want to be so embraced in all of it, in all the emotional aspects of it. And rather than just, because I'm like, I used to joke all the time, I could live in the clouds. Like, beam me up, Scotty. Let me go there.
Yep. Yep.
And there's times where, yes, we can go there, right?
Yeah.
But I also love that this physical part.
Well, and I will say I probably didn't love this physical part for most of my life, because the physicalness of this world has been really challenging in so many different areas. And I would like people would say, "Oh, you need to ground," and I'm like, "Ugh, like what does that even mean? Like I don't like being grounded on this earth. Okay, go walk on the ground, go walk on the grass." And I'm like, so I would go do that, but I was still bypassing my body, right? So I'm like taking it from my spiritual element down to the earth and to the ground, and I would still just like crossing the bridge instead of actually walking the bridge. So I was just like doing that jump over. And now that I feel much more connected to this body and honoring what it's saying to me and how it is a part of this experience has changed everything. So now when I'm like grounding, it feels so completely different that I don't feel disconnected from being here and only being here. It feels much more like there's all three pieces are connected.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
I love like these conversations are unscripted. In fact, before we even hit record, we're like, what are we talking about? And you're getting, having these different, my experience and your experience. I love that we're just sharing this transparency of the journey. And I think, not I think, part of what we did want to bring into this first conversation was how we were introduced to somatics. Because I think that I say think and kind of a lot. So you're going to also see us start unwinding these words that we use.
And I'll try my best not to so
And just and
no justs.
no
Very
justs. But going back to that beginning, I think that there's some importance and value in sharing our own individual journey of where it came in, because they're very different.
very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they both started at the same word.
Fawning.
Morning. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay. Uh, so somatics came for me from you, um, because I was in a relationship that was very difficult, and my body was telling me in so many different ways that I was not safe, that it was not a good thing for me. And every time my body would say that, I would sit in meditation and be like, okay, guides,
Mm.
shh, body, be quiet. Okay, guides, am I supposed to be here? Right. And I did get the message, yes, it's going to be hard and it's going to be worth it. And so then, of course, your mind starts to kind of justify and think of all of the reasons why that's true. And what I've come to realize is, yes, it's going to be hard because you're not listening to your body. It's going to be worth it because you're going to connect with your body. And my whole entire life has changed literally so much in the last year, and even more so in the last 6 months when I really started putting this 100% into practice. And so, I would get these sensations in my body. I started getting the shakes. I had intense, and I would call them my internal shakes, because sometimes people could see it, sometimes people couldn't, but I always 24 hours a day could feel my shakes. And sometimes it's kind of hard. Because I was ignoring the moments that my body was trying to tell me you're not safe. It resorted to the 24-hour messenger, right? And I finally just stopped and I was like, okay, I'm listening. Like, I'm listening. And I was talking to you about it, and you're like, hey, do you know what fawning is? And I'm like, no, what's fawning? You sent me the Luis's podcast. And I literally was like the emoji with the mind blown. And I was like, I've been fawning my entire life. My entire life. It was my coping mechanism to keep me safe from my mother, my environment that I had to grow up in, not just her, but, different scenarios and situations for me to be safe. And then I repeated that in relationship, right? And as soon as I said, okay, I'm no longer fawning. That's not a thing anymore. And like my relationship fell apart. Hallelujah. And I no longer have the shakes. I haven't had the shakes for months and months and months. But then I feel like so much gratitude for my body speaking to the point where it had to get to and a lot of the times, it will get to disease in the body, right? And I know that because of the energetic work that I do. And so I was running energy, but to keep me where I was, but until I connected with my body to break the patterns, it wasn't going to make a difference. And then I had that moment, what, 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line, where I sent you that Marco, and I was like, Steph, if I'm not fawning, who am I? Like, who am I? Am I doing any of this stuff because I want to, or is it really to because I care what other people need? And I like had a total like breakdown day of like, I have no idea who I am, because if I'm not fawning, who am I? Which it was then led on like a beautiful practice of like, I don't do anything that I don't want to do. And that feels so good in so many different ways. And so um fawning, I really truly feel like fawning, not fawning, sorry, somatics saved my life. I don't know where I would be right now. I would not be in a good spot. I know that. Um, if I hadn't found this practice, and it's such a simple practice, right? I will say I have to give credit to Noriana Diesel. She is who I first sat with to do somatics practice. I did like a 4 weeks class with her. Um, and I think after that one is when I started talking to you about it, that I just did this class. And then that's how you and I started talking. So I do want to credit her, because I learned a lot by sitting with her. And she really opened me up to starting that practice of listening into the body. Yeah.
Wait, I'm glad you brought her in, and we'll put links to Luis and Mariana. Is that
Noriana.
Noriana? We'll put links in there because these teachers were placed on our paths for a reason. And it was the time for me to open up and hear, because somatics wasn't new to me. I had heard about it, but I didn't fully understand what it was. And so I love that you brought her in, and we will be sharing all of the links, and we'll be doing a whole episode on fawning, and probably 100 episodes on fawning. So you kind of get a wait if this is a new concept to you, but it is an automatic response. It is your body's way of saying it's not feeling safe right now. And so in order to diffuse the situation, it shuts down. So, um, mm,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's my turn, huh?
Yeah.
So somatics came into really, like I said, I've heard about it, and I've done different breathwork classes, and I had found it through a friend that I was talking to online, and she said, "Have you ever heard of fawning?" And I was like, "No, what is that?" And so she introduced me to the concept of fawning, and then Luis Mojica, Holistic Life Navigation, his work, just had sent me a podcast and said, "Listen to this podcast and you'll understand it." And I remember listening, and I'm like, I have been doing this my whole life. Like, similar to you, like, if I'm not fawning, who am I? Because that's how I was like interacting with people. But here was the thing for me is, after I learned that, I instantly went in and I'm like, okay, I got to find a practitioner to work with. If I want to learn what somatics is, I've got to go find a practitioner. And so I went on this quest of finding somebody to teach me what somatics was. I did sign up. Luis, he does an amazing 6-week program. And I'd already signed up for that, but I was in this waiting of when it was starting. And I went on this quest, and I found somebody, had a conversation with her. And so I was introduced to it December 2021, and then started taking his class in the spring. I didn't end up going and working with that practitioner, and I now understand a little bit more why. And I'll probably share that in a minute. But in Luis's class, it was about the last week, or getting close to the end, of taking his 6-week program, which was essentially an intro into somatic work. He ties nutrition into it. My sister went into a coma, and she was in a coma for 5 weeks. And without somatics, I know without a doubt that I would have handled and processed that experience very differently. It was a moment in my life that nothing else mattered, that it was almost like the soul calling of like, hey, Steph, come be with me. We're going to go through this. But I got to sit with her body and my body for 5 weeks without being able to speak. And it's almost like every sense, you have the five senses, the sixth sense, every sense of me was taken away because the only way that I had was a soul to soul. So I guess my sixth sense was still there, but then this body connection that I remember there was times sitting at her bedside and just being able to touch her and just feel what I was feeling. I don't know what her body was feeling, but to be able to have that physical connection and to be with everything, the emotions and anything that was coming through with watching your 37-year-old sister lay in a coma. And, to literally just be with it, be with the situation, be present. And the somatic, the few practices that I learned, because I'll be honest, when I'm taking the 6-week course, I'm the type of course taker that I take it and then I go back and learn. Like, I'm like, okay, just give me all of the information and then the practices will come. And it was like, okay, you're going to learn this stuff. You're going to have these, uncoupling languages. You're going to have this language around fawning. You're going to have this language around beliefs and all of these things. And then we're going to throw you into a life situation where you now get to experience it. And it truly is what got me through that time. And even afterwards, in processing her loss, she ultimately passed away, and processing the loss and her physically not being here. And, it, even as I look back and just think of the timing, because I'm even listening to your story and, connecting the dots of us coming together as friends and, that spirit, that mystical, that spirit side of us that is that all connected has that knowing that, okay, she's ready for this. But then it was the body that received it and said, now I'm really ready. With me disassociating, with you ignoring, it was always there.
Mhm.
The fawning piece was always there. The gut in my stomach when I know I need to say the thing was always there. But now I listen and know it. And so it's really cool, like just even hearing your story again of that, observing that you do receive the inspiration and you receive the things in perfect timing.
Yeah.
But it was my body was saying, yes, it's time for this. Because, I was like, the part that I wasn't disassociated from was my chills. When it's the spirit chills, it's a yes for me. And I'd always say, okay, chills, it's a yes. So that wasn't new for me, but it was now bringing this language and this awareness of more of the, just the being present, the being physically present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention this, but I think we should, maybe have like a whole separate episode on this is, I was actually taught to ignore. And so it's why I didn't disassociate, is because I was taught to ignore. So I would have these sensations in my body, and then I would go ask spirits. I would get like a specific answer. They wouldn't match, but I was told in the religion I was brought up in, you need to listen to what we're saying, even if what you get is different.
Mm.
And so it was a learned behavior. So it was definitely having something that I have to unlearn. And I think that sometimes for people, it's easiest to just do what you're told. And I also think that some people who aren't used to doing that will do the disconnect.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. We'll have to have a whole conversation of disconnecting versus ignoring. Because like what's coming up is I didn't know I was disconnected until I knew what connection felt like.
Yeah.
Right. And did you know you were ignoring in the moment, or you were just bypassing it because you were getting other insights?
Sometimes it was awareness of I don't know if I don't necessarily know if I was aware that I was ignoring, but it was almost like a confusion. Why do I feel this
Mm.
way if I'm thinking I should be doing this? Why are these two things not the same? And that's what I'm saying is like, I think maybe this is a whole nother episode, because I have a few examples that I can share of like why this and this. And there is a lot of times where I'm like, if I would have followed what my body was telling me, what would have happened?
Mm.
Would it have been the better route, or would it have just been a different route, right?
Yeah.
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 Where now I'm not even like, now I'm asking my body first and then following it with the intuitive side of like, is this feel right, or does this, instead of searching for that answer outside of myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what I wanted. I'm glad you brought that in, because that's what ultimately came out of. I was fascinated that here I was wanting to go find somebody else to teach me about my body and ultimately what I've learned. And Luis was very instrumental, as my teacher. And then I worked with him a following year in my business, was that my body does get to speak. Like my body is unique to me. And yes, there's teachers out there, and here, we're hoping that we can teach and you can learn some things here, but ultimately it is coming back to yourself. And it is that, even when you're getting the intuitive hits, because I mean, how many conversations have we had about that? I mean, just this morning there was just bing, 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 but then, it's still like, okay, are you coming along? Like, you feeling this too? Because I would venture to guess there's going to be very few times that you don't bring your body into the conversation knowing what you know now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And now it becomes, and again, I think this is a whole other episode, is for capacity, is like we can get the intuitive hits, bing, 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 and then our body feels a little constriction. Is that constriction actually a no, or is it like, oh my gosh, I don't have capacity for all of that? So then we can break it down. Do you have capacity for one of this or this piece of this? So that's a whole other episode, but but it just goes into like checking back in, checking back in, checking back in, and seeing and asking and being curious of what is this? Because
Yeah.
we are the ones living these lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Since this is our first one, and clearly I already have 3 now that we're recording on. um, I think I love that you brought it up earlier that there's going to be a witness of processing, because I know that will come up, of being able to witness each other processing, so you can see real time as you're doing it. But what beginning advice would you give to somebody that wants to incorporate somatics into their everyday life?
Um, I mean, my best advice, it would be to come at it with an open heart and curiosity. Release the judgments, the expectations, the needing to know. That was my biggest thing, is I need to know. And I was like, actually, I don't need to know anything right now. I just get to feel into what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, I'll double down on that, is this awareness of just noticing the sensations.
Mm-hmm.
You're brand new to all of this, noticing the sensations, not even brand new. I mean, I say that and I'm like, God, we're all on our individual journeys. But if you can just witness the sensations, not jump to, I got to fix this or figure this out or hear what this sensation is telling me, but simply just notice as much as possible. Notice, when your shoulders feel slouched. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, what does that feel like if I just move them up? Or like, you just kind of like, there's just this playfulness of not diving in, and we'll get into it because you can learn the wisdom, but just
And
noticing the sensations.
right. And I think that's what, that's what is kind of like the tricky word about even curiosity, is because I'm like, I don't mean curious as in like, why am I feeling this? Like, what is the answer? What is the story? Any of that. It's like curiosity of like, oh, I am feeling this. I'm just curious, what does that feeling feel like? What is that sensation doing? Like what would it feel like if I just opened my shoulders? It doesn't have to be the like the deep, like, oh, why am I always so hunched? Like to
Mm.
it to the mind, it's that more of that soft curiosity, I guess would be a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, bring in the, when we were talking before we hit record about the child, because that is just a perfect, to me, that summed up what everyday somatics is for me.
Yeah. Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm taking this other course, and I just really keep feeling like it's just to come to a resolution. And I'm like, for some reason, it feels so strongly to me to just be present with what is happening. And what I kept envisioning is this child falling and like scraping their knee and crying, and the adult walks over and just holds that child while they have that experience, while they are sad, while they are hurt, while they are crying, while they're having all of these feels, and this adult is just holding them. That's it. They're not trying to convince them they're okay. They're not trying to solve the problem. They're not trying to fix the ouchie. They're not trying to talk them through anything. They're just holding them. And that's kind of one of the things I feel like somatics is doing, and doing for me, is I am being able to hold myself without having to do anything about what it is that I'm feeling, and other than just get to feel it. Then it progresses, right? Like once the child stops crying, and then you can say, are you okay? Should we go wash up your bandage? Should we get you a band-aid? Like then you can start the process of what is needed after that. But to just be with it first, and that be the only thing you need to do, just sounds and feels so good.
Mm.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just like resting in it, because the part afterwards is that the mind can step in and say, okay, we need to, now there's things that we can do. But the somatic piece of simply being in the experience. And I'm like thinking of every child. I'm like, what if they just got that? Like, if they just had that hug before we went to fix. And I know that that's a natural tendency, but just to be with it. And so we're going to be the little adult that just hugs you and just hangs out with you while you.
We will hold you.
We're not fixing that boo boo. You almost said boo boo, and so I had to say it.
I know.
Ouchie boo boo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
How do you feel? I feel this might be it, huh?
yeah. I think this was perfect.
Yeah. So for those will watching, like and subscribe, like all that silly stuff. But really what the intention is that Shandell and I are meeting weekly to record things like this. You might get some blippets of our Marco Polos because that's where a lot of the magic happens. But
In our
if
everyday.
yeah, every day, every day. But as you're listening to this and there's curiosities of what you would want to learn about or what you'd want to hear conversations on, we'd love to see comments and, guide the practice. Otherwise, we'll just take what comes through. We have a whole list of stuff that we know we want to talk about, and keeping this very simple and organic.
Mhm.
Uh,
And or if you even want to come and be on it with us, whether you want us to like help you with something you're experiencing, or you have your own knowledge and understanding and gifts in the somatics world that you want to share with other people, we would love to have you on too. So definitely comment or reach out.
yeah.
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 Yay.
Till next time.
Next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See ya.